dear colleagues, I am going to be a little bit shorter than 15 minutes. We'll see how it works. And the reason for that Hilda has told quite a lot of my topic about the Hungarian situation. Never mind, it's a wonderful opportunity to give impressions to you. Because each author has shaped the theme of the book in their own image, as I myself had done. And this has made for some very exciting comparisons. And it is very advantageous for me that I have read all your chapters, and I know now the situation better than before in your countries, so I can see some focal points. Of course, one of them is the systematic placement of labor law. As we've seen, the relationship between labor law and civil law, the situation of collective labor law. But before I go into the Hungarian issues, and I would like to reflect on some issues you have also raised, I must give you two impressions. And firstly, I did not know much about labor law in the heart of Europe because of the language barrier. And I have read so far not only Hungarian but Anglo-Saxon and German literature, but it was really hilarious that alongside the authors of this book, Misic, Stefko, Baranski, Straban, Dudás, Jarasevich, Dolobács, Vinkovics, Wallasek, I could read the thoughts of Florek, Tintics, Ticsár, Koncsár, Vodovnik, Lubarda, Stefanski, Kresál, Szentcsúrpecsek, Kapsek, Vika, Musala, Gersdorf, etc. I just hope that I pronounced it well. And you have raised issues that have been long discussed in the Western European countries, and it was so good. Sorry, not reading Deacon, Friedland, David. It's too much because it always just comes to you, and now it was really refreshing to read from you. And secondly, as Mario Vinkovics points out, our colleague, quoting Heppel, the Nordic countries have gone furthest because by maintaining collective co-determination, they have managed to ensure a balance between social protection and labor market reforms that they believe has improved their productivity, while other countries must follow this path in order to compete globally. From this perspective, what is this chance for us to work on this project? We look closer to post-communist, post-communist states after post-transitions, relatively new member states or non-member states in the heart of Europe, and I think it can provide insight into the specifics of the development of national labor law and national collective labor law. And at lunch break with Senad, we've been talking about it, and he emphasized that there isn't too many differences between us, because I thought that we are different, and Ed told that have a colorful conference. I think we have a colorful conference because of us. And actually, Senad is right. We are not so much different, but Attila Kun was also right, because we should learn much more from each other. And actually, in Senad's paper, I have read that, for example, the Serbian could learn a lot from the Croatian and the Slovenian colleagues. And I think it is the same for all of us, so I hope that this project will help us to learn from each other. The grounds are the same. So what was my aim? Finally, I came to the point. Sorry. Okay. The aim of the Hungarian chapter was to provide an insight into the basics of the Hungarian labor law, but my colleague has already talked about it. However, my main question of the first part was how the codification of the labor law finally took place. And I found it very important at this point, because imagine the situation that two codifications were taking place since the 2000. And it means we had a civil law codification and the labor law codification, and our academics went very deep into the dogmatics of the employment contract and the collective agreement. And now you might have the notion why I would have loved to work on these two contracts. Because Senad was right. It is a contract. And it simplifies so well what I think of the employment contract and the collective agreement. And Senad also thought that we keep on forgetting this, or we might forget this. This is the contract, and there are so many possibilities in it. And of course, when Professor Brückberger, unfortunately he was speaking in Hungarian and you could not understand, and I'm sorry about that, but he was also emphasizing that, for example, he fought for that with Professor Radnai, that employment contract and collective agreement should be incorporated in the civil code, but it is totally left out, and we have got two separate codifications. And these two codifications took place side by side, actually at the same time. So it was the first, and I like reading Kis György. You might know Kis György, most of you, and you can see what he said in 2005. And you can see that in the more than 2-century history of modern labor law, it has evolved from a simple lease to a right to individual and collective labor relations. And in the process, labor law has gradually separated from classical private law without banishing its principles. In 2017, he said it is now recognized that in Hungarian labor law that it is part of the private law, so that there is a slight change. And I would like to quote László Kelemen. I love László Kelemen. He's not a well-known Hungarian academic. And in the 1941, he wrote that the development of public law, which has been mentioned so much today, it is the 441, is not the increasing space of the community idea, the prominence of the public interest, but the fact that the individual self-government is shrinking more and more. The capability to self-govern, to say what I want. And I think when Attila Kun was talking about the tradition, this is the tradition, when the parties are not really able to determine the conditions of the employment contract, but now, in the time of the evolution of the will, really, when we are at the age of the individualism, there is a possibility in the employment contract, and I hope that also in the collective agreement, to try to energize, to trigger them, because I think this is the human-centered approach to labor law. When we discover the strength in these contracts, because they are contracts. In the second part of my chapter, I've been dealing with COVID-19. It was also said that we could hold a conference on this, what kind of labor regulations have been made. But according to the consequences of Bernadette Szekeres, our colleague, I tried to outline for you what home office means now, because it has become a special part of the teleworking, and she's going to speak about it. But it was so good to see one thing, that whenever the legislator decides what are the boundaries of the employment relationship and what are the boundaries of the relationship, you can see in chapter 15 that now the Hungarian Labour Code, when sets the boundaries for employment relationship and who we think to be an employee, then it lists these ones, these forms of employment. And then you see that whenever you outline such a list, then immediately another new atypical employment relationship will come out, and you have to rethink again. And that was with the home office, and Betty will talk about it, that the home office was incorporated in telework, of course. And what else have I talking about? It was the numbers. the collective coverage. What Kunatilla said about the collective coverage in our region, it is general to us. And Hilda also reflected to it, to the numbers. And what is thought-provoking for me is that we have got so many contracts for indefinite time collective agreements. And just think of it, it is a way of thinking. If we conclude a collective agreement for a definite time, then we are energized, we are motivated, and it triggers us to sit down and try to negotiate again. But when you do it for an indefinite time, then it is going to be empty. And it is not really a breach of source of duties, because that's what the contract meant to be, the source of rights and obligations. And actually, it is the will of the parties who can enshrine, who can really make it alive for us. I can be naive, I can be optimistic. You can say I'm like a butterfly flying from one flower to the other. But I truly believe that in employment contract and in collective agreement, labor law has future. And I don't know how. I will put it to the debate, but we have to discover and we have to find out how we could trigger all this. So thank you very much for your attention.
I will continue on that marvelous and optimistic note and start with a quote. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And I think this word of Epictetus in the last 3 years have gained incredible relevance, and the social, economic circumstances are facts, are given. But how we react to it as labor lawyers or HR managers is a rather different thing, and that is in our hand. I will combine the labor law aspect with human resources because I have a history of labor law in my life, but right now I'm doing coaching and HR. So I hope it will be a nice complementary element to your marvelous paper. Okay. Whenever I'm citing Professor Nóra Jakab, I'm using American English and blue letters, so you can distinguish. She's talking about this very specific relationship between civil and labor law, and this kind of dance has been mentioned in many of your presentations. And it reminds me really the moving of the ocean towards the shore, like the moon somehow attracts the ocean to move. And we in labor law have also this coming closer and retrieving from civil law, and it has this very specific rhythm. It was nice to read about it in your paper. I will call you Nóri because Professor. You say that these labor law regulations has responded to these changes with the idea of partnership, and there is this floor opening for partnership, and I would like to offer my comments on that as well. And last but not least, atypical forms, hybrid forms, and expansion of telework. And I'm very happy you ended with this optimistic note, because now I'm not the only one. I also see this as a great opportunity, and methods and measures and regulations appeared in a very, very short period of time, and now we have the chance to work with the material, like when a volcano erupts and you have the lava, and you can have many marvelous artifacts from that. So COVID is a great opportunity for many areas, from digitalization to sustainable development. Remember the dolphins swimming in Venice in the very beginning of COVID, but I will not go to dolphins, although it's a very lovely topic. But I would like to reflect upon the dialogue area some of you mentioned, and also, well, of course, the buzzword flexibility. I will connect it to trust. And there are two other areas I would like to touch upon. and one is renewal in trainings, and the other is mental health and the awareness on mental health. Because Attila mentioned, my colleague, who sadly left, that this human face of labor law becoming more and more important. So COVID can act as a catalyst, first of all, for dialogue. And I do not only mean social dialogue, but dialogue in many, many levels. And though Luca and Sára mentioned that it's not going so well, and sadly it's true, we can take a look at the French example, where public servants were asked, so in your opinion, what measures should be taken to make situation better, simplify operations and restart the country? And in your day-to-day life, what change could be made to restart the country? So dialogue, starting of dialogue, is the first element or first possibility of catalysis. The second is the renewal of the training scenario. And the University of Public Service is part of a research network. And for 2 years, we asked employers, so how do you see the scenario? What capacity, skills, capabilities are necessary? And interestingly enough, the scenery has changed, and the importance of social competencies gained special relevance. So the findings of this research group really underlines that the pandemic reorganized the hierarchy of competencies, and flexibility is on the top 5 list. Of course, emotional intelligence, as usual, is in the top 5. So, and besides very classical or traditional forms of supporting employees to train themselves, like having a study agreement or study contract. Okay, I give you free time and a bit of money, and then you stay with us for 2 years. More and new forms are really becoming relevant, such as bite-sized trainings at the workplace, or encouraging self-driven trainings. As you can see, this golden retriever is training itself how to chase cats in the garden from the computer. So it is important to support this organizational learning and learning at an individual level at a different speed, and not just with the traditional methods. Thirdly, COVID may act as a catalyst for mental health awareness. And here, the keyword work-life balance was mentioned today. And to Nóra and to me as well, minority groups are very dear, like persons with disability, and women or young adults are also very much in danger of this isolated period. So the pandemic, I believe, has reinforced the duty of the employer to care for the employee, and this duty does not only include providing proper soup to wash your hands and disinfect, but to respond to psychosocial risk factors and promote resiliency. And since I have only 2 minutes left, I will go to my last point, flexibility and trust. Because I firmly believe that these times can act as catalyst for these two. Nóra says it's a chance for the parties to be flexible, but at the same time preserve what's important. And it's interesting because transition from office to home happened quite fast. In jobs, you would think, oh, it's impossible to do it from home. Yet it has happened. And the question, why has not it happened, or why hasn't it been applied before? The answer is the lack of trust. So perhaps it's time for us to revisit this issue. Besides flexibility, do we trust each other? Can we rebuild this trust between each other? And I would like to close with the word of a famous contemporary historian and philosopher. The quote goes like this: "Trust that has been eroded for years cannot be rebuilt overnight. But these are not normal times. In a moment of crisis, minds too can change quickly. You can have bitter arguments with your siblings for years, but when some emergency occurs, you suddenly discover a hidden reservoir of trust and amity, and you rush to help one another. Well, what better message for this era for labor law and human resources. And happy birthday, dear.